Hi everyone. So I wanted to go over the matching game code. Now, I was really impressed with the discussion that went on. You guys are doing a really nice job dissecting the code, and overall, I'm happy with the ability of you to read and analyze code, which is very important. If you are considering a career in the field, there's a good chance that you're gonna not just create code, but probably have to look at code that other people have done, and you're going to have to figure it out. And this is a bit of a mean example because it's not great code. And that's the point of the exercise. A lot of you were saying, this could be done better and this could be done better, and you're absolutely bang on. It totally could. This is not really well written code. There are lots of different ways and better ways you could do this stuff. The point of the exercise was to kind of figure out what these arrays are doing and how you work with arrays. But there are lots of things in this code that are bad, and we're going to talk about a few of them. So um, this is how you declare an array list. I'm sure you figured that out by now, but this is a little bit different, so just be aware of this. And what that says is that you're creating an array list of strings. You don't have to specify that every time. If I were to take that out, see, it doesn't give me an error, but if I know that I'm only going to be putting strings into the array list, it's a good thing for me to do, because then the computer, the compiler, knows that there's strings in there, and it will allow me to use string functions if I get at a certain part of the array. If I don't include that, so if I take that back, oops, and leave it like that, then what I have is an array list of objects, and the computer doesn't really know how to treat that. So if I go and get a certain part of the array, a certain component of the array, it won't know that it's a string. It won't know that I can do things like matching, compare it to another string or use all the different string functions. So if I know that I'm only going to have certain data types, then I declare it. Okay? Down here, this is where we put in the images. This can be a pain in the butt, and it can be really, really finicky. Like, for example, if I were to take out that would cause problems. That would mean it wouldn't be able to find that picture. So I have a picture of RAM. You can see it right here, and it's in my package folder. But if you do something small, like if you forget that backslash, or if I had actually a couple people email me and they were having issues and they had just a little typo like that, that's going to cause problems as well. So you just be careful. But what you're doing here is you're taking the image and you're making it into an image icon object, and then we can add that to the button, and that way we get what looks like a matching game kind of layout. So here, from here to here, we're adding these image icon objects, we're creating them. We're not actually using them yet. And then later in the code, you see them used. Okay. This right here, this is an integer array. So I just want to stop here for 1 second, because what's the difference? We talk about this, and this is an array list. What's the difference between an array list and an array? Well, the difference is that with an array list, I can have a little more flexibility in terms of growing the array, shrinking the array, and doing other things like removing. Array lists have more functionality to them. They allow me to do things a little bit more easily. Arrays are basically, you want to use arrays, these guys. You want to use these when you know exactly how many spots in the array you're going to have, and you're probably not going to be removing and adding. So I know that for this game I'm only going to have 16 cards. There's really no need for an array list for change, okay? So that's why you see both, but I just want you to be aware there is a pretty significant difference between an array list and an array. Okay, so I've got all these variables. These are just integers. They're undeclared. This is an integer that is declared to be 16 to start. This is an array list that has 16 compartments in it. All right, so let's continue on through the code. Now, here's the layout. Let's see what happens when I hit play. So I double click on the play and it takes me to here. And now I can see loops, and I can see some stuff going on with the array, stuff going on with the array list called set, and the array list called cards. And mainly you guys have figured this out on the discussion area, which is great. But what I'd like to do is show you guys how to use breakpoints. A breakpoint occurs when I click over here on these numbers, and look, see how I have this little pink box, and it's called a line breakpoint. Essentially, the way I like to put this is, you know how sometimes you watch a movie and movies can be complicated, like think about Interstellar or Inception, or one of those movies is kind of cerebral. And if you're watching with a group of people, maybe someone pauses the movie and then you have a little conversation about what's going on so everyone can figure it out. That's a lot like a breakpoint. A breakpoint allows me to run my code up to a certain point, and then I can kind of pause it and see what's going on. So watch what happens. Now, I'm not going to hit run. I'm actually going to hit this button here, debug project. And when I hit it, a bunch of stuff's going to happen down here. Notice it says debug, not build. And my game pops up, and nothing really looks like it changed, but I put a breakpoint inside of the play button. So if I hit play, oh, okay, well now look, things have changed. And I can now go into my code, and I can see what the variables are and how they're changing and all that stuff. So if I look, for example, and hover over to Z, it says to me, Z is not, or Z, if we're, I guess, whatever, Canadian. Z is not a known variable in the current context. What does that mean? It means that I've paused the code right here. I have not run this line of code yet. And so the computer or the compiler doesn't know that there's a variable called Z yet. But watch what happens after I run this line. So here's a button up here called step over, and I'm going to basically run this one line of code. So this is basically the frame advance if you were thinking about it like a Blu-ray or a DVD. So I hit this button and, okay, it runs a line of code, and now it knows that Z is 0. Okay? And so because of all the stuff we've done up here, the compiler is aware that there's a change, there you go, change array, and I can carefully, here we go, I can carefully go look at the change array, and it tells me, okay, you have a change array and it's got 15 compartments to it, and none of them have anything in it right now. See that? Values, none of them have any, so the 10th compartment of the change array has nothing in it. Okay, but if I hit this button and kind of step through the code, I'm in a for loop right now. So as I step through the code, it keeps kind of going through the for loop over and over and over again. It's going to go through it 16 times in total. And I'm going to put another breakpoint down here and take this one out. And when I continue, I'm going to press this button here, which will continue to the next breakpoint. Now I can then go and look at change, and change will have changed. And now you can see all the values are 1. So what I just learned is that this little bit of code here, well, it makes all of the change values in that array equal to 1. So I'm not telling you this because I don't think you could have figured this out on your own. I'm telling you this because for a lot of you, if you've never used breakpoints before, this is a bit of a game changer. Now you can actually see into your code. So when something's going wrong, you can go and examine a variable and check to see that that variable is acting the way you think it is, because a lot of times it's not. So here's another array list coming up. So we have an array list called set. And here's a double for loop, right? We've got a for loop inside of another for loop. And that's not exactly intuitive. So, again, I could sit here and go, okay, I think what's going to happen is set is going to add 1 and then 2. And then it's going to go do it again. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And a lot of you figured that out. But if I go and I look at set, so right there it's telling me the size of the set array list is 0, right? So let's step through. First of all, I'm going to take this breakpoint out. I'm going to put another one here. And I'm going to step through for a while so I can see what's happening. So it's taking the integer value x. I was wrong actually in my description. It's going to put x in there. So I have a 1 and then a 1. And then it comes out, and then I'm going to have a 2 and then a 2. And then a 3 and then a 3. So I'm stepping through the code, and I can, at any point I can go, okay, let's take a look at what set is right now. And now set has 4 things in it. And you can see I have 0, 0, 1, 1. And so if we're right, then the next one's going to be 2, 2. So I can continue on a little bit. I'll just keep click, 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 click. And I'll go look at set. And still finicky. Okay, look. Set is growing, and it's up to 8 things in it now. 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. So it is behaving the way I eventually figured out it would. And if I hit this button to continue, now it's through this loop. And so set is all set. I'm not meaning to make these puns, I promise. And you can see, yeah, there's set, and it's got 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, and so on. Okay, great. So now we can see exactly what's going on here. This is creating this set array list with zeros and then ones and then twos and so on. Okay, so now we're down to this for loop, and we want to figure out what's going on here. So let's keep stepping. And a random number looks like it's going to be picked. Looks like it's going to be between 0 and 16. Is it? Yeah. Okay, so index is 8. The next line looks like it just changes it into an integer. And what we're doing, okay, cards.add, set.get. So we are getting the 8th thing from set, and we are going to add that to the cards array list, which currently doesn't have a size, right? So now, basically, we're going to use the set array list to grow the cards array list. We're going to randomly pick values from here and put them in here. And then on the next line, it looks like when we're done with it, we're going to remove it from the set array. Okay, so just for fun, I'm going to highlight that only. And notice it tells me exactly what that part I highlighted is. So what is at the index 1 of set? It's 4. So basically, when I run this line, I should see 4 added to cards. So there's one thing in cards now. I'm going to bet it's 4. There it is. Okay. And so you can now see that in this loop, it's going to take random things from the set array and put it in the cards array. So it's basically randomizing set. And somebody made a really good observation. I can't remember who, but somebody deserves a bit of credit for noting that this is dumb because you could just take the same array and shuffle it. And that is true. Like I said, this code is not great code. It's just code that we can use to learn. And so you're right. This could be done a better way, but you can see what's going on, I hope. And so I'm going to take this breakpoint out, and then I'm going to run it to the next breakpoint. And when I do that, I can take a look at cards. Notice now set is 0, so basically we're done with the set array list. And I'm going to look at cards, and cards should be all those numbers randomized. And yeah, look, 4, 5, 2, yeah, it's all random. Good. Okay, so breakpoints allow me to understand that a lot easier than if I just sat there reading. Okay. Okay, now let's go back to the design. Actually, I'll stop. Yeah, I'll stop. Oh, no, I won't. I was going to stop debugging, but I won't yet. And let's go to what happens when you press a button. Okay, so if I press a button, what happens is I take the cards and I get the 0th. Now, this is specific to the first card. The first card in Java, like in normal English, we call it the first card. If Java could speak, it would call it the 0th card. Java starts everything at 0. So the first, what we think it would be the first element of an array, Java calls it the 0th element of the array. So what we're saying here is, hey, somebody clicked on the first card. Let's get the 0th card from our cards array and find out what it is. Okay, well, why don't we try that? So let's, why don't we put a breakpoint here, and we'll keep running this. Here we go. And now with a breakpoint here, if I click here, look, it stops for me. Great. So I clicked on button 1, now it stopped. And so it's going to get the card, whatever's in the 0 spot of cards. So I can see what's in the 0 spot. It's a 4. So when I run this line of code, this should be a 4. It is. And then I have this giant if statement, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And if temp equals 0, well, it's not 0, and it's not 1, and it's not 2, and it's not 3. It is 4. So when I step now, it's going to run this line of code. And so I step here, okay, And button 1, set icon to E. So basically, if you get a 4, that's going to correspond to icon E. And if you're thinking, what's icon E? Well, icon E is a keyboard. So if I continue stepping, now I've actually set it. And here we increase a counter. Okay. And then if the count is 1, which it is, then we say, okay, we're going to keep track of C1 so we remember which one we picked. We picked the picture that's represented by 4, and then change is 0. So the 0th element of change is 0. So we have changed the 0th element. Okay? And let's pick another button to press. So I'm just going to go down here for a minute, and this is the 3rd button. So the 3rd button, I'm going to put a breakpoint in the 3rd button there. Okay, let's continue running our code. And now it's waiting for me to do something. 3rd button I think is here. I hope it's here. Yep, it's there. So it stops at this point. And what spot is that? By the way, you can see the keyboard showed up. I forgot to mention that. So I step and we got a 2. So I didn't get a match because remember the other one was a 4. So now it's going to show the picture. So we got a 2, so it's going to show a picture of C, whatever C is. I scroll to the very top and C is a DVD, looks like. Okay, so I'm going to step again. So I figured out what I'm going to put on the screen. Now the count goes up again. Now this is our second guess, right? So the count is not 1, the count is 2. And so I keep track, and C2 is 2, C1 should be 4. Okay, and I keep track that I've changed it. Okay, now I go back to my code, and some people, oops, if you step too far, sometimes you go places you don't want to go, and that's okay. We'll just continue. Some people noted that it wasn't a great idea that you had to press guess again, and you're right. Like ideally, if you don't get a match in a good game, it would maybe wait a second and then turn them over, and then you go again. But in this game, we have to hit guess again. So I'm about to hit guess again. Let's go take a quick look at guess again. And I can do that just by going here, by the way. Here's my guess again button. So I can double click here and go straight to guess again, and I'm going to put a breakpoint there. So I go back here, I hit guess again, and it stops me. Now it says if C1 equals C2. So we know C1's 4, we know C1's 2, they're not going to match up. So I'm going to step, and that's not going to be the case. And so I go here, and I'm going to set all of the changes back to 1. So remember how I kept track of the fact that I had changed the second, I believe. So it's going to search here, so let's go step here, and right there. Remember we hit the first button, so this represents the first button. So have we changed the first button? Yes, we have. But now we know that we're not right, so we got to put it back. So this is responsible basically for flipping the cards back over and setting our change back to 0, or back to 1, because we know that we haven't found the right card yet. So I go through that. And then I do it again for the other button I hit, which is the 3rd, which is right there. And it's looking good. Okay? And I continue. Okay, so that's how the guess again button works. And obviously, if you were to match them, then you would find the case where C1 does equal C2, and the cards would not flip back over. They would just stay the way, or they would show the you did it type thing, and that's it. Okay. So overall, that's breakpoints, and that's all I'll show you on breakpoints. But you can see they really help you understand how your variables are behaving, and then I can stop debugging just by pressing that button, and it takes me out to here. Overall, this code is not good, right? And you can see anytime you have code repeated like this over and over and over again, there's got to be a better way. And there is a better way. Basically what we have is we have the exact same thing going on for all of the buttons, and it was a big time pain in the butt to go and change all of these numbers for all the different buttons, and nobody in their right mind would ever want to code that way. What would be better is if we had an array of buttons and we could tell them all to behave the same way with a few differences being like the picture and whether or not it's going to match and stuff like that. And we'll learn more about that later as the year goes on. But the point of this was to understand how arrays work. So how does the change array work? And then the cards array list, how does that work? You can add, you can remove, you can get things from an array list and stuff like that. So I think that's about all I'm going to say. I had a pretty long video here. What should you have taken away from this? Well, how to use breakpoints is huge. You want to be able to go through code and analyze it, and by now you should be able to use arrays, you should be able to use array lists, and you should know the difference between the two of them. Okay? If you have any questions at all, if there's anything you were wondering about the code that I didn't cover, then all you have to do is fire me an email or put something in the discussion. And again, I just want to say to all of you, you're doing a great job with that discussion. Keep it up, and we'll talk to you all soon.